It was the summer of 2016, the height of the clown hysteria. And I had just moved to my grandfather's old farmhouse in the outskirts of Peoria, Illinois. I was 17, broke, and trying to finish school online after dropping out due to anxiety issues. The countryside was supposed to be peaceful, quiet, healing. But there was something off about the fields that surrounded the house. One evening, I took my usual walk down a dirt road that split two massive wheat fields in half. The sky was bruised with sunset. Crickets chirped in sync. I had my earbuds in. Tool, if I remember right, when I saw something move near the edge of the wheat. I paused the music. At first, I thought it was a scarecrow, a pale shape, hunched, motionless. But then it shifted, just a bit, like it was breathing. I squinted, trying to make out the details. The shape took a step forward. The sun caught its face, white paint, red mouth stretched grotesquely, and wild orange hair. It was a clown. Just standing there in the middle of the field, half hidden in the wheat, like it had been waiting for me. I froze. My first instinct was to yell, but my throat locked. He didn't move closer. He just stood there, watching me. I backed away slowly, then I turned and ran. I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? A clown in the wheat field? They'd think I was still mentally spiraling. So I brushed it off. But it happened again. 2 nights later, I woke up around 3 a.m. My room faced the backyard and the edge of the wheat. Something made me look out the window. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was that same quiet dread. And there he was, standing at the edge of the wheat field again, closer this time, right at the fence, just watching. No movement, no sound. He lifted one arm and waved at me. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. In the morning, there were footprints in the dirt outside the fence, large ones, deep. That night, I left a motion sensor camera in my room, pointing toward the field. The next morning, I checked the footage. At 2:47 a.m., the camera picked up movement. I watched, barely breathing. The clown stepped out from the wheat, slowly, deliberately. He walked right up to the camera, stared into it, his face inches from the lens. And then he smiled. But it wasn't the smile that haunted me. It was what he did after. He reached into his clown suit, pulled out something small, and held it up to the camera. My student ID. I didn't even know I'd lost it. I moved back to the city that same week. Never explained it to anyone. Never went back to that farmhouse. But sometimes, I still dream of him, standing in the wheat, waiting.
My name is Chloe. I've always loved balloons, the bright colors, the way they float, the simple joy they bring. So when I saw a new balloon vendor at the local park, a man dressed as a clown, I didn't think twice about buying one for my little sister, Lily. He was a strange clown, though. His costume was a patchwork of dull, muted colors, and his face paint was minimal, just 2 dark circles around his eyes and a thin, downturned red smile. He didn't speak, just gestured towards the balloons. I picked a bright red one for Lily. As he handed it to me, his fingers brushed mine, and I felt an unnatural coldness. Later that evening, Lily was playing with her new balloon in her room. I was in the living room, reading, when I started to hear it, a faint whispering sound coming from Lily's room. I thought it was just her playing, talking to her toys. But then the whispering grew louder, more distinct. It sounded like multiple voices, hushed and sinister. I walked to Lily's door and peeked in. She was asleep, the red balloon floating near her bed. The whispering was definitely coming from the balloon. I crept closer, my heart pounding. The voices were murmuring, almost singing, in a language I didn't understand, but the tone was undeniably malevolent. I reached out to touch the balloon, and as my fingers brushed its surface, the whispering stopped abruptly. I snatched the balloon, my hand trembling. The silence that followed was even more terrifying than the whispers. I ran to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and popped the balloon. It burst with a loud bang, and for a moment I felt a wave of relief. But then a faint, high-pitched giggle echoed from the empty air, followed by a chorus of whispers, now seemingly coming from everywhere in the house. I threw the deflated balloon away and ran to Lily's room, scooping her up. We spent the rest of the night at a friend's house. I never told anyone about the whispering balloons. Who would believe me? But now, every time I see a balloon, I hear that faint, sinister murmur, and I wonder if the clown didn't just sell me a balloon, but something far more sinister. Something that's still out there, whispering in the wind, waiting for its next victim.
My name is David. I'm a night watchman at an old abandoned theater on the edge of town. It's a creepy place, full of shadows and echoes, but the pay is good, and I'm usually alone, or so I thought. One night, during my rounds, I heard a faint, rhythmic clapping coming from the main auditorium. I froze. The theater was supposed to be empty. I slowly made my way to the stage, my flashlight beam cutting through the oppressive darkness. The clapping stopped as I reached the stage, replaced by a profound silence. I swept my flashlight across the empty seats, but saw nothing, just rows and rows of dusty velvet chairs. I shrugged it off as my imagination, the old building playing tricks on me. But as I turned to leave, I heard it again, a single, slow clap, followed by another and another, coming from different parts of the auditorium, slowly surrounding me. I spun around, my heart pounding, my flashlight beam dancing across the seats. Still nothing. But the clapping grew louder, faster, accompanied by faint, unsettling giggles. It sounded like an entire audience, invisible, yet undeniably present. I started to feel cold, a chill that had nothing to do with the drafty old building. I ran, my footsteps echoing through the empty theater. I burst out of the main doors, gasping for air, and didn't stop until I reached my car. I sped away, leaving the theater and its unseen audience behind. I quit that job the next day and never went back. But sometimes, when I'm alone in a quiet room, I hear it. The faint, rhythmic clapping, followed by hushed giggles. And I wonder if the clowns from that theater didn't just stay behind, but followed me, waiting for their next performance, waiting for their next audience of one. And I know, with chilling certainty, that the show is far from over.
My name is Arthur. I used to be a street performer, a magician. But times were tough. I saw an ad for a gig at a new independent circus setting up on the edge of town. They needed a clown. Desperate, I took it. They gave me a costume, a garish faded thing, and a mask. Not paint, a mask, It was old, made of cracked porcelain with a fixed, unsettling grin. The moment I put it on, something shifted. The first few shows were fine. Kids laughed, parents clapped. But then I started to feel different. My movements became more erratic, my laughter more guttural. I'd catch glimpses of myself in reflections, and the mask's grin seemed to widen, its eyes darker. I started having nightmares, vivid dreams of being trapped in a dark tent surrounded by other clowns, their faces just like mine, all laughing at me. One night, during a performance, I saw a child in the front row crying, not from fear, but from genuine distress. I tried to comfort her, but my movements were jerky, my voice a distorted honk. The parents pulled her away, their faces horrified. That's when I knew something was terribly wrong. The mask wasn't just a costume, it was changing me, it was consuming me. I tried to take it off after the show, but it wouldn't budge. It felt fused to my skin. The other performers, they just stared, their eyes blank, their smiles fixed. They looked like me, like the clowns in my nightmares. I ran from the circus, from the town, from myself. But the laughter, the distorted, high-pitched laughter, followed me. It echoes in my mind even now. I'm hiding now, constantly moving. I see them sometimes in the periphery of my vision, glimpses of painted faces in crowds, in reflections. They're looking for me. They want the mask back, or maybe they want me to join them. I don't know what they are or what that mask truly is, but I know this. I'm no longer Arthur. I'm just a vessel for the performer's curse, forever haunted by the laughter of the clowns.
The year was 2018, a time when the world felt a little more connected, yet strangely isolated. I remember that summer day vividly. The sun, a warm embrace against my skin, was a stark contrast to the chill that would soon seep into my bones. I was on a solo hiking trip, seeking solace in the ancient embrace of the Blackwood Forest, a place whispered about in hushed tones by the locals. They spoke of forgotten trails and ancient spirits, tales I dismissed as mere folklore, the fanciful imaginings of a secluded community. My life at the time was a whirlwind of deadlines and demands. A junior architect, I was constantly battling against the clock, my creativity stifled by the rigid confines of blueprints and building codes. This trip was my escape, a desperate attempt to reconnect with the wild, untamed part of myself that had been buried under layers of stress and expectation. I craved the quiet, the raw, unfiltered beauty of nature, hoping it would somehow cleanse the weariness from my soul. I had always been an independent spirit, comfortable in my own company. Friends were a luxury I rarely indulged in, my social circle as sparse as the ancient trees that surrounded me. Perhaps it was this solitude that made me an easy target, a lone deer wandering into a hunter's snare. Or perhaps it was simply fate, a predetermined path leading me to an encounter that would forever alter the landscape of my reality. I had been walking for what felt like hours, the rhythmic crunch of leaves under my boots a comforting lullaby. The trail, initially well-defined, began to narrow, the trees growing denser, their branches intertwining overhead, forming a natural canopy that blocked out the sun. A faint, almost imperceptible sound reached my ears, a rustle, a whisper, like dry leaves skittering across the forest floor. I paused, my senses heightened,
but dismissed it as a trick of the wind, a playful gust weaving through the ancient boughs. The sound persisted, growing subtly louder, more distinct. It wasn't the wind. It was a deliberate movement, a presence. My heart quickened, a primal instinct screaming at me to run, to flee from the unseen. But curiosity, a dangerous companion, held me rooted to the spot. I tried to rationalize it, to convince myself it was just a deer, a fox, any of the countless creatures that called this forest home. Yet a cold dread began to coil in my stomach, a premonition of something far more sinister. I continued my trek, the whispers now a constant companion, a chilling chorus echoing every step. They seemed to be moving with me, paralleling my path, sometimes ahead, sometimes behind. The air grew heavy, thick with an unspoken tension. I reached a sharp bend in the trail, the path veering abruptly to the right, disappearing into a thicket of gnarled ancient oaks. As I rounded the corner, my breath hitched in my throat. Standing directly in the middle of the path, silhouetted against the fading light, was a figure. It wasn't human. Not entirely. It was tall, impossibly thin, its limbs elongated and twisted like the branches of a dead tree. Its skin, if it could be called that, was a mottled grey, resembling decaying bark. But it was its face that truly froze me. It was devoid of features, a smooth, blank canvas, save for two hollow obsidian eyes that seemed to drink in the last vestiges of light. And from its form, a faint, almost inaudible whispering emanated, a cacophony of undistinguishable voices, like 1,000 secrets being told at once. I stood there, paralyzed, my mind struggling to comprehend the impossible. This wasn't folklore. This was real. The creature, if that's what it was, remained motionless, its blank gaze fixed upon me. A silent challenge, a terrifying invitation. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to run, but my legs were leaden, rooted to the earth by an invisible force. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, swirling around me like a suffocating shroud. I don't know how long I stood there, locked in that terrifying tableau, but then a flicker of defiance ignited within me. I wouldn't be its prey. I wouldn't succumb to this paralyzing fear. With a surge of adrenaline, I forced my legs to move, taking a hesitant step backward. The creature remained still, its blank face a mask of unspeakable intent. I took another step, then another, slowly, deliberately, refusing to break eye contact. I wouldn't give it the satisfaction of seeing me flee in terror. I continued to back away, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The creature did not pursue. It simply watched, its featureless face a mask of inscrutable intent. Once I was out of its immediate vicinity, I turned and ran. Not a frantic, panicked sprint, but a desperate, determined dash. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The whispers, though fainter, still pursued me, a chilling reminder of the encounter.
I made it out of the forest, my lungs burning, my body trembling. I never saw the creature again, not in the forest, not in my dreams, but the memory, the chilling whispers, they remained. They became a part of me, a constant, unsettling presence. I finished my trip, but the solace I sought remained elusive. The wild, untamed part of me had been awakened, but not in the way I had hoped. It was a primal fear, a raw understanding of the darkness that lurks just beyond the veil of our perception. That night, back in the relative safety of my rented cabin, I tried to dismiss it as a hallucination, a product of exhaustion and an overactive imagination. I cooked a simple meal, the mundane act a desperate attempt to ground myself in reality. But then, a faint scratching sound came from the window, a rhythmic, insistent tap. My blood ran cold. I peered through the curtains, my breath held captive in my chest. Nothing, just the inky blackness of the forest. I tried to convince myself it was a branch, a nocturnal animal, but the scratching grew louder, more aggressive, moving from the window to the door, then to the walls, surrounding the cabin in a symphony of dread. I grabbed the heaviest object I could find, a cast iron skillet, my knuckles white as I gripped the handle. I was no longer rationalizing. I was terrified. This was real. It had followed me. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers clumsy with fear, and dialed the local sheriff's office. The scratching intensified, punctuated by a low, guttural growl that seemed to vibrate through the very foundations of the cabin. I could hear the whispers again, closer now, a chorus of unseen voices pressing against the thin walls. I huddled in a corner, the skillet a pathetic shield against an unknown horror. The growl became a roar, the scratching a frantic tearing. I thought my time was up. I thought I was going to die. Then, the distant wail of sirens. The sounds outside abruptly ceased. Silence. A profound, unsettling silence. The sheriff's deputies arrived, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. They found nothing. No signs of forced entry, no footprints, no broken branches. Just the lingering scent of damp earth and something else. Something metallic and acrid, like old blood. They dismissed my story as a case of nerves, a vivid imagination fueled by the isolation of the woods. But I knew. I knew what I had seen, what I had heard, and I knew it was still out there, waiting. I left Blackwood Forest the next morning, never to return, but the whispers, they never truly left me. Sometimes, late at night, when the wind howls just right, I can still hear them, a faint, insidious chorus, reminding me of the day I met the faceless horror in the woods, and I wonder sometimes if it's still whispering my name.
My name is Leela, and this happened in the fall of 2016 when I was 15. My parents had gone on a weekend getaway, and I was staying at my aunt's house just outside of Cleveland, in a small town where nothing ever happens. Her house was cozy but old, lots of windows, too many, honestly. She went to bed early, like always, and I stayed up watching Netflix on my laptop, curled up on the living room couch with the blanket. It was past midnight when I first heard the tapping, soft, barely noticeable, like something lightly brushing against glass. I paused the video, waited, nothing. Then, tap, 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 from the large sliding door behind me. I slowly turned around, expecting to see a tree branch or maybe the neighbor's cat, but what I saw was a man in full clown makeup, standing inches from the glass. He didn't move, just stood there, expressionless, as if waiting for me to speak. His face was grotesque. White paint cracked like old plaster, blackened eyes, a red mouth drawn far too wide. He wasn't smiling. He was staring. I leapt off the couch and ran to the hallway yelling for my aunt, but she was already coming out of her room, half asleep, confused by the noise. I told her what I saw. She followed me back to the living room, but the clown was gone. She looked outside. Nothing. She thought I had just fallen asleep and imagined it, told me I was watching too much creepy stuff online. I almost believed her. Until the next night. She had gone to bed early again. I locked every door and window this time, even pulled the curtain over the sliding door. I couldn't sleep. I lay in the guest room with the lamp on, just staring at the ceiling. And then that same soft tap, tap, tap. But this time, it was at my bedroom window. I turned my head slowly. The curtain was drawn, but I could see the shape behind it. A human silhouette, standing perfectly still. I couldn't breathe. My body refused to move. I wanted to scream, but I just froze. I slowly picked up my phone and texted my aunt. "He's back." She didn't reply. I don't know if she was asleep or just didn't believe me. I finally gained the courage to peek. I pulled the curtain back an inch, and there he was. Again. Same white cracked paint, same wide mouth, same dead stare. But now, he was holding a balloon. I ran to my aunt's room, dragged her out of bed. She followed me back to the window, furious, thinking I was pranking her. When she looked out, the clown was gone, again. She was ready to call my parents and send me home early. But then, we noticed something. On the glass, where the clown had been, was a red handprint. We didn't sleep that night, not a second. The next morning, police came. They checked the yard, the woods behind the house, even the neighbors' security cams, but no one saw a clown. No footprints, no balloon, no handprint. But I know what I saw, twice. And to this day, I can't look at glass doors or windows at night because I'm terrified that I'll see him again, standing there, holding another balloon.